Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor repeatedly trespassed and trimmed my bushes at the edge of the property line." I knew that I was going to have to write a story about my neighbor at one point. The only thing I did not know was when and why. To put it very bluntly, my neighbor is crazy and terrorizes everyone else that lives near him. The part where it hits the gray area is that I'm not quite sure how much of what he is doing and saying he does on purpose, and how much could be due to some underlying problem. The biggest example of that is trying to figure out the things that he says. Now, some of it are obvious lies, like him saying that he is friends with the Pope and he is close friends with the presidents from many different countries. He also says that squirrels are working for the CIA and he is hired by some random agency to eliminate them and keep government secrets safe. Now, I know on the surface it is clear that none of that stuff is true. I just don't know if he actually considers it true or uses it as an excuse when he gets caught doing things that he shouldn't. The major thing being that it is not uncommon for anyone in the neighborhood to find him wandering around on their properties, sometimes armed with a pellet gun doing God knows what. Obviously, most people call the police, but they don't do much except ask him to please leave their property and go back to his. Since he is just mostly wandering around and not actually doing anything illegal, they don't want to arrest him. I understand that because they probably realize that he is not all there, and I actually think he has some member of his family working on the police force. Many know something the rest of us don't. Still, we don't want to see him on our property due to how unstable he actually is. I have seen him use his pellet gun to attack the CIA squirrels, even though he is mainly just shooting at empty air. Everyone's main concern was that he was accidentally going to hurt someone or do something like break a window in his crazy shooting spree. He never actually did any damage until one day when he was in my front yard. I did not actually see him at first, but when I did and realized what he was doing, I called the police immediately. I knew that for normal trespassing, they were not going to do anything, but he had hedge cutters and was trimming the bush in front of my property. I have no idea what he was thinking, but I was scared to approach him because of him having something sharp. Now, I'll admit the bush was not anything special, but it was mine and he was absolutely ruining it. I guess he felt there was something wrong with the flowers that grew on it, because he managed to cut off about 90% of them before the police got there, and I felt comfortable enough going outside. Despite being totally crazy, he was aware enough to put the shears down when the police showed up. They asked me what the problem was and I explained to them, only for them to try and give me an answer to let the neighbor get away with it. Officer, so we actually cannot do anything about this, because he was not actually on your property or destroying it. Me, you saw him destroying the bush. There are cut flowers all around it. Officer, we know that he did that to the bush. It is not actually your property though. Me, I don't understand. So you know he did it, but you are saying that my front yard is not my property? Officer, the first 10 feet are actually town property, so he was not technically trespassing. He might have just been keeping the bush out of the road. Me, the bush was not in the road. Can you please just tell him to go back to his own home? I don't feel safe with him having the shears and being so close to my house. They finally agree to at least do that, and neighbor walks back over to his house. I still did not like what he did and looked up different ways that I could try and stop it from happening again. I was able to get a specific kind of restraining order against him where we could still both live on the block, but he was not allowed to go on my property or within 20 feet near it. So it was enough to keep him from that area in front that apparently does not belong to me. The problem was though that getting him to follow it becomes a bit of a problem. I have called the police multiple times because he was in violation of the restraining order, and once he was even right up at my window. They still won't do anything though, and they just ask him to go back to his own house, which does the trick eventually. My restraining order seemed to have a domino effect though, where more and more people were getting it against him. The big result from this was finally the police having to do something, since they were getting almost daily calls about him breaking restraining orders, and his family connection must have not been strong enough to stop it. He never actually gets in trouble, the police just take him away for a while and return him back to his house after a few hours. Still, it was better than it was before, and he seems to be slowly learning that he cannot just wander around and trespass constantly, because he is actually going to get into trouble one of these days. I know it is not the most satisfying ending for some of you, but at the same time we really don't know what is going through his head. I personally think that whoever is helping him stay out of trouble with the police should be taking steps to help him in the long run. He has not been caught trespassing for weeks now and instead is just on his own property with his pellet gun, shooting at invisible squirrels and muttering to himself how he needs to keep the whole area secure for when the head of the FBI comes for his visit. I feel really bad for Neighbor and I hope that one day he gets the help that he clearly needs, but I would say I'm happier and feel safer with him staying out of everyone's property and destroying things. He is basically an outsider to the neighborhood more than ever, as nobody wants anything to do with him. I know that some people have tried going to his house and being friendly with him, only to be met with the pellet gun pointed at their face and being told to get the hell away from him. Nobody else was in a rush to try and mend fences after that, and we are just waiting and seeing what will happen with the neighbor next. And Ripe stars, if you enjoy the stories about crazy neighbors, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments. And if you want to go the extra mile, I would also really appreciate it if you could like the video, because recently we pretty much always get over 1000 likes on each video, which is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled "Fire Me for Being Pregnant? Bad idea." This last year during the pandemic had been a tough year for my family. My husband went from 6 figures supporting our family on his salary alone while we pocketed my entire salary to losing his job for 8 months. I work in political campaigning, which means I work on short-term contracts as an independent contractor. In other words, if we lose an election, I move on to the next race. I made a pretty good name for myself working on the lower levels of a campaign and moving up quickly. In my state, this year there were statewide elections and I caught a lucky break and ended up the campaign manager on a statewide race. I'm the youngest CM, 24 female, to run a statewide race in about the last 20 years. When the primary came up, we lost the election by 200 votes. While we lost the campaign, coming so close to winning and my age made me a kind of superstar in my field. After we lost, I had offers from all over the state for jobs. The problem is, I had just bought a house and was not looking to relocate, like you often have to do in politics, or the positions were not high enough coming off being the top dog, as the higher positions were already filled. I got an offer to join a local campaign, so no relocation, but the salary was lower than what I was used to. I would however be the CM again. However, I learned quickly my boss had a holier-than-thou personality. She made several comments about how real women breastfeed and have natural births. I would later be able to do neither, and it really screwed with my emotional well-being. I don't have time to list all the red flags, but I was literally just waiting until my husband got a job to exit. The campaign had not been built out at all, there was no one other than the candidate. I ended up building out our entire team, consultant, fundraiser, staff, etc. Luckily, I have made a lot of powerful connections in my time. I signed my contract and sent it in with the salary we had agreed on, with the stipulation that if we raised enough money 3 months down the line, my salary would be raised but could not be lowered at any point. Just a few weeks prior, I had also found out that I was pregnant and my due date was the week of the election, and just a week after joining the campaign, I was also in a serious car accident. Luckily, my pregnancy was safe, but I herniated a disc in the car accident, and due to my pregnancy, there were very few things that could be done as far as helping my back or pain management. If I did my job right, that should not be an issue because my job can essentially be handled from home and staff could do the rest. I had the team working in lockstep and I was proud of the work I was doing, even though only about 10% of my views aligned with the campaign. Then we hit a snag. The candidate's husband got deployed to a rather dangerous place for a month and she completely checked out. She stopped fundraising, which means that everything comes to a halt in campaigning. She stopped putting in the legwork to win. We also lost our only lower staff member during this time. We knew she was worried about her husband, so no one on the team tried to push back very hard. Eventually her husband came back and it was go time. There was not a minute to waste and I was back to getting our operation working full speed. One day she calls me up to tell me how 20 years ago her first job as a private school teacher was making as much money as I was now. I also live in an expensive DC suburb, not the backwoods where she grew up. I have multiple college degrees and this job offers no benefits, unlike teaching. Not comparable at all. This is when I realized there might be a problem. A couple weeks later, I told her I would need to take a step back from doing the other staff members' jobs, mostly door knocking, because of my injured back, but that we would hire someone. Unfortunately, due to the lack of fundraising, it made it hard to pay anyone else and those duties fell on her. CMs don't typically door knock. We had a team meeting with the entire team and I started pressuring the candidate about all the things she was not doing and there was a legitimate meltdown. She started yelling at me about how I was not doing my job and my pregnancy was not her problem and how I was the reason everything was failing, and then hung up on the entire team. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. After this, I decided to take a step back from doing all the duties that are typically handled by lower level staff and just focused on doing my job duties, which were not being appreciated. I pretty much went radio silent and she kept nitpicking at everything. Everyone on the campaign started to grow uneasy, but I told them to just hold out. Well, sure enough, she calls me up and says, "Since you are pregnant and can no longer door knock, you can either work for state minimum wage or you can find a new job." Mind you, she knew my husband had been out of work for 8 months and thought I had no options at this point, but what she didn't know is that my husband had gotten a job offer that exact day. So I stopped her right there and thanked her for the opportunity and told her I would be working my contractually obligated 30-day notice at my current salary and then leaving the campaign. She then began to scream at me about how she was not paying me a dime more and started listing off a list of issues she had with the way I was doing my job. I stopped her, thanked her once again and told her all of my finishing tasks would be completed when I received payment for the last month I worked. And yes, she was a month behind on paying me, as well as payment for the 30-day notice that she was legally required to pay me whether I continued working or not. I waited a few hours and she never finalized my termination in writing, so I sent her a termination letter thanking her for the opportunity and once again repeating everything we had discussed on the phone. She sent me a nasty email again reiterating that I would not be paid for the previous month or 30 days and listed about 10 things that I had done to be terminated, including that I did not wear makeup to work every day. I decided to send this email to the rest of the team and sure enough everyone quit except for the consultant. In 5 minutes she lost everyone she had. Then a friend of mine offered me my dream job working for him, so all in all it worked out in my favor within 5 minutes of being fired. Well, here is where things got tricky though. I realized that my contract that obligates her to pay me for 30 days notice is not signed and I am screwed. Well, sure enough, in her fit of rage she starts emailing everyone talking badly about me. The only problem is I still have access to the campaign email and I am seeing every mail she is sending. Emails saying that she wants to keep me on staff, but that I need to take less money and that I should not have been dishonest about my pregnancy, so clearly I was not doing my job that badly. She just wanted to pay a pregnant woman less. She also asks the consultant for a list of things that I did wrong on the campaign so that she will have cause not to pay me my contract. I noticed that the consultant never replies to this email. He tells her that if she wants to fight it, to send him a copy of the contract and he will have a lawyer take a look at it. Well, sure enough, she sends him a signed copy of the contract and once again my contract is valid and she now has to pay me my severance. She has given me every piece of ammunition I need to get paid at this point, as well as wage a discrimination suit for referencing my pregnancy as a reason for termination. I hire a lawyer. She continues to pester me about turning over all of my work. The thing is, since I'm an independent contractor, I only owe her a final product if I get paid. I reiterate that she is not getting anything until I've been paid and she can take it up with my lawyer. She begins slandering me to everyone I know and continuing to send emails about me that I am just collecting. She then starts calling every friend that she has to bully me into giving her what she wants. My response to all of them is, talk to my lawyer. In one final ditch effort, she has the consultant call me begging me to turn over the stuff. The problem is that the consultant and I are personal friends and he is really unhappy working for her but has contractual obligations. I tell him to tell her the same thing, talk to my lawyer. 5 minutes later, I get a call back from him saying that she has fired him because he refused to throw me under the bus and make up excuses for my termination when he believes I was wrongfully terminated. She fires him too and now he is out of his obligations. He also tells me that the lawyer she sent the contract over to said to pay me. In a matter of 2 weeks, she is once again at square one with no one on her side, she is out of money and struggling. She finally emails me at 11 PM that she is willing to pay me, it is nighttime and I don't work for her anymore, so I decide I don't need to respond at that moment. Well, she starts calling me incessantly and texting me, all of which I am ignoring. By the time I wake up in the morning, I have 20 texts and 5 missed calls. I tell her that I will need to talk to my lawyer at this point and I will get back to her after he responds. Well, she goes nuclear. 20 minutes later I get a call from the police. She is claiming that I've been embezzling campaign funds and stealing her data. I have to get my lawyer on the phone and explain the whole situation and why this is a BS claim. I offer the bank account information for the funds she claimed I stole and proof that they were sitting right there in her account. She just does not know how to access them because I'm usually the one who does that. The police officer thinks she is nuts at this point because, well, she is, but then informs her that it is considered larceny to withhold my pay and asks me if I would like to press charges. I say, if she refused to pay, then yes. Within 2 days I received a check in the mail with my payment and I turned everything over. The funny thing is that my 30-day notice pay was actually more money than if I had finished out the contract with the reduced pay she wanted to pay me. I got an extra $700 and did not have to work for her for the remainder of the time. She ended up losing her election in a swing district by 15 points. And the next one is titled, Quit my job on the spot when the owner's son said, do you know my last name? I was working sales at a car dealership for about 6 months, averaging about 75 hours a week. The norm if you wanna be successful. It is almost 11 PM and I'm about to leave the dealership and go home for the weekend. My boss John, who is the owner's son, comes up to me and starts giving me trouble for not closing my last deal, even though I am sitting at 14 sold in total this month and have made him about $60,000 gross profit for his dealership. We go back and forth, blah blah blah. He then turns around and says, we might have to find you something else if you keep up this behavior. And then proceeds to walk towards me, pointing his finger in my face and says, just as the title says, do you know my last name? And I stood there stunned to no clue what to say, so I just said, yeah I do, and proceeded to turn around, walk away and walk to my general manager's office, and I quit there. I was one of the 2 salesmen, small town, and left on a Friday, understaffed. Now I moved back to my home city, found an absolutely amazing new job, and I go snowboarding every day after work, and life has gotten so much better. And by the way guys, if I remember this story correctly, it was from a subreddit called Anti-Work, which is essentially stories about people finding themselves in awful work situations, usually having to do with insane bosses or sometimes even bad co-workers, and in the end the more positive stories, so to say, are about the OPs quitting said job and then finding a new one and finally being happy. If you want to hear more stories like this, then please let me know in the comments and I will deliver. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel, but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.